expression, it lasted for almost 20,000 years. If these were postcards of nostalgia, ours was a very long farewell indeed. And it was also the beginning of our discontent, because if you wanted to distill all of our experience since the Paleolithic, it would come down to two words: how and why. And these are the slivers of insight upon which cultures have been forged. Now, all people share the same raw, adaptive imperatives. We all have children, we all have to deal with the mystery of death, the world that waits beyond death, the elders who fall away into their elderly years. All of this is part of our common experience, and this shouldn't surprise us, because after all, biologists have finally proven it to be true, something that philosophers have always dreamt to be true, and that is the fact that we're all brothers and sisters. We're all cut from the same genetic cloth. All of humanity probably is descended from 1,000 people who left Africa roughly 70,000 years ago. But the corollary of that is, if we all are brothers and sisters and share the same genetic material, all human populations share the same raw human genius, the same intellectual acuity. And so whether that genius is placed into technological wizardry has been the great achievement of the West, or by contrast into unraveling the complex threads of memory inherent in a myth, is simply a matter of choice and cultural orientation. There is no progression of affairs in human experience. There's no trajectory of progress. There's no pyramid that conveniently places Victorian England at the apex and descends down the flanks to the so-called primitives of the world. All peoples are simply cultural options, different visions of life itself. But what do I mean by different visions of life making for completely different possibilities for existence? Well, let's slip for a moment into the greatest culture sphere ever brought into being by the imagination, that of Polynesia. 10,000 square kilometers, tens of thousands of islands flung like jewels upon the southern sea. I recently sailed on the Hokulea, named after the sacred star of Hawaii, throughout the South Pacific to make a film about the navigators. These are men and women who even today can name 250 stars in the night sky. These are men and women who can sense the presence of distant atolls of islands beyond the visible horizon simply by watching the reverberation of waves across the hull of their vessel, knowing full well that every island group in the Pacific has its unique refractive pattern that can be read with the same perspicacity with which a forensic scientist would read a fingerprint. These are sailors who, in the darkness in the hull of the vessel, can distinguish as many as 32 different sea swells moving through the canoe at any one point in time, distinguishing local wave disturbances from the great currents that pulsate across the ocean that can be followed with the same ease that a terrestrial explorer would follow a river to the sea. Indeed, if you took all of the genius that allowed us to put a man on the moon and applied it to an understanding of the ocean, what you would get is Polynesia. And if we slip from the realm of the sea into the realm of the spirit of the imagination, you enter the realm of Tibetan Buddhism. And I recently made a film called The Buddhist Science of the Mind. Why did we use that word science? What is science but the empirical pursuit of the truth? What is Buddhism but 2,500 years of empirical observation as to the nature of mind? I traveled for a month in Nepal with our good friend Mathieu Ricard, and you'll remember Mathieu famously said to all of us here once at TED, Western science is a major response to minor needs. We spend all of our lifetime trying to live to be 100 without losing our teeth. The Buddhist spends all their lifetime trying to understand the nature of existence. Our billboards celebrate naked children in underwear. Their billboards are mani-walls, prayers for the well-being of all sentient creatures. And with the blessing of Trosig Rinpoche, we began a pilgrimage to a curious destination, accompanied by a great doctor. And the destination was a single room in a nunnery where a woman had gone into lifelong retreat 55 years before. And en route, we took darshan from Rinpoche, and he sat with us and told us about the Four Noble Truths, the essence of the Buddhist path. All life is suffering. That doesn't mean all life is negative. It means things happen. The cause of suffering is ignorance. By that, the Buddha did not mean stupidity. He meant clinging to the illusion that life is static and predictable. The third noble truth said that ignorance could be overcome, and the fourth and most important, of course, was a delineation of a contemplative practice that not only had the possibility of a transformation of the human heart, but had 2,500 years of empirical evidence that such a transformation was a certainty. And so when this door opened onto the face of a woman who had not been out of that room in 55 years, you did not see a mad woman. You saw a woman who was more clear than a pool of water in a mountain stream. And of course, this is what the Tibetan monks told us. They said at one point, you know, we don't really believe you went to the moon, but you did. You may not believe that we achieve enlightenment in one lifetime, but we do. And if we move from the realm of the spirit to the realm of the physical, to the sacred geography of Peru, I've always been interested in the relationships of indigenous people that literally believe that the earth is alive, responsive to all of their aspirations, all of their needs. And of course, the human population has its own reciprocal obligations. I spent 30 years living amongst the people of Chinchero, and I always heard about an event that I always wanted to participate in. Once each year, the fastest young boy in each hamlet is given the honor of becoming a woman. And for one day, he wears the clothing of his sister and he becomes a transvestite, a wailaka. And for that day, he leads all able-bodied men on a run. But it's not your ordinary run. You start off at 11,500 feet, you run down to the base of the sacred mountain Antioquia, you run up to 15,000 feet, descend 3,000 feet, climb again over the course of 24 hours. And of course, the wailaka must spin. The trajectory of the route is marked by holy mounds of earth, where coca is given to the earth, libations of alcohol to the wind, the vortex of the feminine is brought to the mountaintop, and the metaphor is clear. You go into the mountain as an individual, but through exhaustion, through sacrifice, you emerge as a community that has once again reaffirmed its sense of place on the planet. And at 48, I was the only outsider ever to go through this, only one to finish it, and I only managed to do it by chewing more coca leaves in one day than anyone in the 4,000-year history of the planet. But these localized rituals become pan-Andean in these fantastic festivals like that of the Coyariti, which occurs when the Pleiades reappear in the winter sky. It's kind of like an Andean Woodstock. 60,000 Indians on pilgrimage to the end of a dirt road that leads to the sacred valley called the Sinicara, which is dominated by 3 tongues of the great glacier. The metaphor is so clear. You bring the crosses from your community in this wonderful fusion of Christian and pre-Columbian ideas. You place the cross into the ice in the shadow of Ausangate, the most sacred of all the Apus, or sacred mountains of the Inca, and then you do the ritual dances that empower the crosses. Now, these ideas and these events allow us even to deconstruct iconic places that many of you have been to, like Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu was never a lost city. On the contrary, it was completely linked into the 14,000 kilometers of royal roads the Inca made in less than a century. But more importantly, it was linked into the Andean notions of sacred geography. The Intihuatana, the hitching post to the sun, is actually an obelisk that constantly reflects the light that falls on the sacred Apu of Machu Picchu, which is a sugarloaf mountain called Huayna Picchu. If you come to the south of the Intihuatana, you find an altar. Climb Huayna Picchu, you find another altar. Take a direct north-south bearing, you find to your astonishment that it bisects the Intihuatana stone, goes to the skyline, hits the heart of Salcantay, the second of the most important mountains of the Incan Empire.